Hi, crime family. This is Brooke, and I just wanted to jump in and let you know that at the end of this episode, we have added an extra little fun segment that we're going to add at the end of every month. The last episode of every month, we're going to add a blooper reel at the end. So I know we cover some really heartbreaking and terrifying crimes, so we just wanted to add a little bit of levity and give you some of our goofiness at the end. So make sure you stay tuned at the very end to check that out. And don't forget to follow us on all the socials. We're on Facebook, Twitter, Snapchat, YouTube, Patreon, Instagram, all the things. And we are True Crime State of Mind. Hey, crime family, and welcome to True Crime
State of Mind. And I'm Andrea.
I'm Brooke, and today we have brought to you a case from Tacoma, Washington. And it's the Tacoma Mall shooting of 2005. So we're just going to jump right in. So we have our victims, which I couldn't find the names of all of the victims. There were 7 victims. And spoiler alert, guys, we have no fatalities in this case. Everyone survives. Yay! So we have, as our victims, the ones I could find, so we have Joe. I have no idea what his last name is. He was in a episode of I Survived that was done on this case. He was a store employee at the Sam Goody store. He was an Iraqi war veteran who had just barely returned from Iraq. And he was married to someone named Desiree. And she was actually also in the store, but she was up at the register paying for whatever they were buying. Or whatever she was buying. He was working there. And she actually escaped. She thought he was right behind her, and she just ran out of the store. But he was kept in the store. They'd only been married for 1 month at the time.
That is a crazy situation to get into.
Right? I mean, he comes back from Iraqi war, gets married, and then a month later is held hostage. So that's kind of crazy.
Yeah.
And then we have Brendan, and he goes by Dan McCown. He's 38 years old. He was also a mall employee. He's now a stand-up comedian, and he was the founder of Kaleidoscope Comedy, which he founded in 2007, so 2 years after the mall shooting. Then we have Catherine Riggins, who was 24 at the time. She was the store manager at the Sam Goody store. We also have James Toomey, who was a employee of the T-Mobile kiosk, and Daniel Torres, who was also employee of the T-Mobile kiosk. And, so they're all witnesses. So, yeah.
All right.
So Andrea's going to dive right into the perpetrator.
Yeah. So Dominick Maldonado. So what I read, he describes his early childhood as happy until his father died when he was 10 years old. Yeah. And his mother briefly put him in foster care afterwards. I don't think she could really handle life at that point.
Wow. Is he only child?
No, he has siblings.
Oh. Did they all go to foster care? Yeah. Oh, that's so sad.
Yeah, I think she just kind of lost it for a little bit. And he even said that, like, after his father died, he kind of just didn't care about life for a long time. So, he was harassed and beaten at a police youth camp when he was 12 years old and thrown in the woods naked. Law enforcement officials have denied this, but later we find that this is the reason that he actually committed the crime. So, Brooke's going to go into the crime. Sorry, that wasn't a lot of detail there, but he's young.
Right, he is young. He's only 20 years old.
Yeah.
So, obviously, this one takes place in Tacoma, Washington. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about Tacoma. So it's the 3rd largest city in Washington, and it's about 32 miles southwest of Seattle, and it's right on the Puget Sound. So, funny story about Puget Sound. So there's a college there called UPS, and University of Puget Sound. And actually, when I met my husband, which is Andrea's brother, he was planning on going to Puget Sound. Like, he was like, I'm not going to be in Utah for very long. Don't get too attached. I'm leaving in the fall, and we met in the spring. And he says, I'm leaving in the fall. I'm going to go to University of Puget Sound with my friend John. And, this is just casual. Don't get too attached. And yeah.
A typical story.
Right? It didn't work out that way. We still live in Utah. And, we're kind of attached to Utah because, like I said in a previous episode, my husband owns mines here. So we're not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So anyways, the population in 2020 was approximately 220,000 people. And the state of Washington is obviously named after George Washington, which, if you don't know, that was our first president. So if you don't know, now you know. That's a Hamilton quote right there. The state is the nation's leading lumber producer. I did not know that. I thought it would be Oregon, honestly. But yeah, Washington is the nation's leading lumber producer. And the fishing industry also significantly contributes to the state's economy. Washington ranks second only to California in wine production. Thank you, Washington.
Yeah, gotta love that wine.
Yeah. And Washington is one of the wealthiest states in the nation, as well as one of the most liberal states in the nation. It was one of the first states to legalize same-sex marriage, so whoop whoop.
That's awesome.
Yeah, love is love. So on November 20th, 2005, now we're going to get into the crime here. 20-year-old Dominick Maldonado entered the Tacoma shopping mall around 12:15 p.m. and opened fire with a Mac 90 semi-automatic rifle. So this was actually Black Friday this year, so it was packed.
I did not even put two and two together. Oh my gosh.
It was Black Friday. So I know there was quite a few articles that were like Black Friday shooting and all these. And ironically, there was actually a Tacoma Mall shooting recently, and there was a fatality. I believe there was just one fatality. Not that just one is acceptable. But there was one fatality in this one, and it was actually just recently. I think it was in October of 2021, and we are here now in January 2022. So it was only just a couple months ago. So it was kind of hard to find, to kind of sift through all of the information to find the 2005 shooting versus the 2021 shooting. So he was... when Dominick Maldonado, when he arrived at the mall, he'd been awake for several days, and he was said to be high on methamphetamines. I couldn't find that this was actually confirmed anywhere, but it was mentioned in a few articles. So when he got there and he had drawn his weapon, somebody that was unidentified had actually drawn their weapon on Dominick to try to kind of take him out instead of... to prevent any fatalities or anything like that. And they actually decided not to because they were worried about hitting innocent bystanders. Because there were a lot of people in the mall. Because like I said, it's Black Friday in 2005. Black Friday now, there's nobody in the mall, guys. Yeah. It's sad.
Exactly. But 2005.
It was hopping. Yeah. So when he entered, he had hundreds of rounds of ammo, and he had planned on complete mass destruction. So when he first walked into the mall, he kind of walked past the T-Mobile kiosk a few times. So both Daniel Torres and James Toomey, they both said that they saw him, that he had walked past a few times. And James Toomey, I believe, was the one who said that he actually had asked him, can I help you with a phone? What? Why do you keep walking past? This is weird. And he just kind of was like, nah, I'm good. But then Daniel Torres said that he actually saw him drop his coat and just start firing. So his shots did hit Roberta Davis, who is 53. She suffered a gunshot wound to her leg just above the knee, and she said she was close enough to the man to see the muzzle flashes as he fired the rifle. She had been shopping at JCPenney, and she never even felt the bullet hit her. She just didn't even realize until she was partly through or running away. So she was running away, and she's like, my leg kind of hurts. And she looked down, and her husband pointed out that she had a hole in her pants, and that, some blood was starting to come down her leg. Doctors later told her that the round came close to shattering her femur, but since it was a through and through, it wasn't actually a bad.
I mean, that's still...
Yeah, I mean
close
traumatic.
Is still traumatic.
Yes.
Oh my gosh.
For sure. So during the course of the shooting, Brendan, who goes by Dan McCown, he was a mall employee. And he said he was on his way from the Excalibur cutlery store in the mall where he was an assistant manager. And he was just making a deposit to the other end of the mall. And he's, taking his time, going from one side of the mall to the other, stopping, talking to friends, being like, hey, what's up? So he actually had stopped at it was a photo store called the Kit photo store. And he had had heard the shooting. And he had actually had a 9mm CZ. I don't know what that is. CZ pistol? I don't know guns, guys. So he drew his 9mm pistol, but he had second thoughts because he saw the shooter and he was like, oh man, he's just a kid. And when you see his picture on our YouTube channel, he looks like he's 12. He looks very, very young. He's 20, and that's still super young. Yeah. But he looks like he's literally a kid. He later said he wasn't even sure if Dominick even saw him draw his gun, and I don't think he did. I didn't see any mention of him saying that he saw anybody else draw a gun on him.
Yeah, I didn't see any of that either.
Right. And so he was kind of kicking himself, of course, because he was like, I wonder if he would have seen the gun, even if he hadn't shot, but if he just would have seen the gun, if he would have just stopped. Yeah. He later said that he wished he'd seen him pull the gun. And he said Dan said of Dominick that it looked like he was very calm. He was very casual. He even said he could have just been carrying a guitar. Like, that's how calm and casual he was, carrying this semi-automatic weapon. He just could have easily just been, holding a broomstick. Like, he was just like, so calm. And he said he was Dan actually put away his gun because not only was he worried about shooting a kid, but he was also kind of concerned, like, what if the cops are on their way and they see that I pulled out my gun, and am I going to get in trouble for having a gun? Not that he had his gun illegally. He had a concealed weapons permit and everything, but he was still just like, this is in public, and am I going to get in trouble for pulling a gun out? So it's kind of crazy the things you think of that you're going to get in trouble for stopping a shooter,
Well, I mean, they could honestly maybe think that he was the shooter, too, in a situation like that. So maybe
I hadn't thought of that.
Didn't want to get killed by police.
Right.
I mean, that could be the situation as well.
So instead of pulling the gun and shooting Dominick to stop him, he thought, you know what, this is just a kid. Like, am I really going to shoot a kid in the head? So instead, he tried to tell him to put the gun down. He kind of yelled out, like, hey, kid, why don't we just put the gun down? So Dominick's response was to shoot at Dan, and he struck him once in the leg and 4 times in the torso, which damaged Dan's spine and left him paralyzed for life. So he was laying on the floor for an hour while police negotiated with the suspect, who was holding several people hostage in a nearby store. So he literally is laying there for an hour thinking, I'm going to bleed to death. I'm just going to sit here and I'm going to bleed to death. So after an hour, some of the employees from the Kit's camera shop that he had stopped by just to say hi, they were, like, as quietly as they could. They got, like, one of those 8-foot tables, and they were putting the legs down to use kind of like a stretcher. Mm-hmm. So they kind of, like, rolled him onto the table. And at that point, it had been an hour. Like, which I'm sure feels like forever.
Yeah.
Ugh, when you're, like, bleeding out and you're like, I'm gonna die, this is it. So they were like, you know what? Fuck it. It's been an hour. If we, he's still in this other store holding these people hostage. Hopefully he won't even realize that we're leaving. So they actually were like, we're just gonna get him out of here. And so just then, when they were like, you know what? Screw it. We're just gonna go. The police had actually negotiated with Maldonado to allow them to come in to get the injured man, which ended up being Dan. So they did get him out, the police did, and they got him in an ambulance and got him to the hospital. So this was November 20th, 2005, and he was not released from the hospital until January 13th, 2006. So this was nearly 2 months later, but he was permanently paralyzed from the waist down. Oh. Now, Dan is a stand-up comic, like I said, and he was working at this, mall as kind of his, means to an end, I guess. He really wanted to be just a stand-up comic. So now he kind of like makes a joke of he's a sit-down comic, not a stand-up comic now. But he started Kaleidoscope Comedy Club, so I mean, he's doing the damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, he sure is.
Yeah. So after Dominick had shot Dan, he had gone into the Sam Goody store. And now this is where the I Survived episode comes in, because I got to hear firsthand 2 of the survivors and what happened in that store. So Catherine was the manager of the Sam Goody store, and she said there were maybe 20 to 30 people shopping in the store at the time when she heard the shots. So she was standing up on a step ladder, and she was hanging Christmas ornaments in the shop window. And Joe, her coworker, who is an Iraqi veteran, remember, he yelled to her to get down off the ladder, like get down, get behind the counter. So and she's just kind of shocked, like frozen in fear.
Right.
So he grabs her and pulls her down behind the counter, and customers are running to the back of the store. You know, it's just chaos, of course. And then Dominick come in the store, and he is just randomly shooting everything. He's shooting the walls. He's shooting the counter that they're hiding behind. He's shooting at product in the store. And so Catherine, she later said when she saw him, she was like, he looked like he came from church. He literally looked like he had just come from church. He was wearing a suit and tie, dress slacks, and she just thought he looked really calm. And then Dominick, after he's like shooting the store, he goes behind the counter and sees that Joe and Catherine are hiding behind this counter, and he forces them to the back of the store against the wall. So Joe said then he knew that they were going to be hostages, and he could see people out in the hallway, like shot, laying on the ground, and he thought for sure he'd killed some people. And another person that was in the store named John, he was a customer, and he was also taken hostage with them. Dominick then ordered Catherine to lock all the doors and the entrance gate. So he says, you have 30 seconds. You have 30 seconds to go and lock all of the doors and pull down the gate. And she's thinking, 30 seconds is not long enough. Like there's a back door, there's a side door, there's the gate to the mall, and the gate to the mall itself will probably take 30 seconds. So she's going as fast as she can. And he's got the gun on Joe, and he's like, I'm going to shoot Joe if you're not back in 30 seconds. Oh. And she said, you know, and it's funny because Joe is like, from his perspective, he's saying, if I were her, I would just run. Like, why go shut the gate and come back? He was so surprised when she shut the gate and come back. And she later said, I had no intention of running. The thought never even crossed my mind. There was no way I was running. So then Dominick sat the hostages in a circle, and he told them he was doing this because he wanted others to feel his pain, and he wanted to tell them why he was doing this. So he said he was angry with police, like Andrea had mentioned, of a bad experience at a summer camp that was sponsored by police. So I didn't even realize that at this time he was in foster care. So it was probably like a foster care camp, like kids that were in foster care were allowed to go to this camp. And he claimed that at this camp he was neglected, hazed, he was called names. And so he was just so angry at the cops, and that he felt like that was kind of where his life kind of hit a downward spiral. And so he was going to die by cop today. So that was his whole purpose in this, is that he wanted to commit suicide by cop, but apparently wanted to take people with him. I mean, I don't get people's logic a lot of times.
Yeah. I mean.
So he says he wants to confront the cops. So he calls 911 himself, and he says, hey, I got hostages here. And he says, I shot people, and I'm mad because this isn't being handled correctly. This is what I want. I want to talk to the cops. I want to talk to the cops that ran the summer camp. And so they eventually get him in touch with some negotiators, and the negotiators are saying, you know, we're trying to get a hold of these cops, but we can't find who ran this summer camp, because it was when he was 12 and now he's 20, so this was 8 years ago.
Yeah.
And I don't know if this summer camp was even still around at that point. I mean, who knows? So then he decides he's going to call his ex-girlfriend to tell her goodbye. So he calls her, and he's telling her goodbye, and he's telling her that he attempted suicide before and that there's something wrong with him. And they allow, then he allows Joe to also contact his wife and tell her, like, goodbye, kind of. And the cat is saying how, like, it's just so sad because she's like, I don't really have anybody to call. So I believe she calls her mom, and her mom is at the mall. So her mom's at the mall outside knowing she's inside.
Really?
Yeah, I saw a newspaper article that was talking about how she was terrified because her 24-year-old daughter was inside.
Can you imagine, like, you being I'm not a parent, but can you imagine having one of your kids?
Even if they're 24.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you don't ever stop being
a
mom.
I mean,
that's scary.
Oh, terrifying. So she calls her mom, but she says that in her phone call, she's not really, like, saying goodbye. She's just like, this is what's going on. We're being held hostage. Nobody's hurt in here. We're okay. So then the power goes out. So obviously in hostage negotiations, this is just one of those tactics. They just turn, I mean, according to TV.
Everything I've seen on TV does this, so I assume this is what they do.
Right? Like, I don't know. I've never been in a hostage situation, thankfully. So the power went out. So Dominick puts John up, like, he makes him sit on a stool. And I don't know why, but he makes John sit up on a stool. He's the customer. So then he is kind of, like, pointing towards some of these boxes that are about 15 feet away. And he said, there's someone there. I saw those boxes move. Someone's there. And so Dominick's kind of freaking out. He's thinking it's a police, like the police are moving in.
Yeah.
And which is kind of not logical because all the doors are locked. I mean, they'll find a way.
They will find a way.
So he goes to move the boxes and he finds a 12-year-old boy.
Oh.
So sad. So this 12-year-old boy, Joe says he found him earlier. Like I guess when he first came into the Sam Goody store and he was kind of shooting things up and he was making Catherine go lock the gates and lock the doors and everything. While she was doing that, he was also making Joe and John put, like, counters up against the doors and stuff to kind of, like, barricade them in.
Right.
So at this time, Joe had found this 12-year-old boy, and he just said, don't make a move. Be absolutely silent. I'm going to cover you with these boxes. So I guess he made a move, obviously, and Dominick saw him. So he didn't know he was there this whole time. So this has been like an hour, and he didn't know he was there. So he, pulled the kid out and made the kid go sit with the other hostages. He didn't hurt him, though. He didn't shoot any of the hostages, actually. So when he was this is when he was on the phone with the negotiators, and they decided to let him he decided to let them take out Dan, who had been injured. And he said, if that goes well, I'll release these other hostages. So I guess at this time, the negotiators are kind of talking to him, and they're also talking to some of the hostages. So the negotiator either told Joe, or it's kind of unclear. So the negotiator either told Joe or he told Dominick, the shooter, that there were 7 people who were shot that were outside the Sam Goody store. And then he starts to cry and shake, and he's like, oh, I shot 7 people. Like, this really happened. Like, I really did hurt people. I didn't even realize I really hurt people. Mm-hmm. So then he's like, you know what? I'm going to let the boy go. I'm going to let the 12-year-old boy go. Mm-hmm. So he lets the 12-year-old boy go. Well, he tells Catherine to let the 12-year-old boy go and then come back, or he'd shoot Joe and John. So again, she has an opportunity to just leave.
Run, yeah.
Yeah, just run. And Joe's like, I'm kind of, like, willing it to her, like, hey, just go. Like, I wouldn't come back. But she did. She came back. Right. She let out and again, she said, I had no intention of leaving. Like, I was just trying to get this 12-year-old boy.
You don't know in your situation, like, what you would do. Like, if you would be the person to run, or I would like to say that I would
be the person to stay.
But I mean, she just seems like a pretty strong person to stay.
Right? I don't know what I would do. I honestly don't know. After they let the child go, Dominick turns to Joe and he says, do you think they'll give me the death penalty? And Joe says, you shot 7 people. You might have killed someone. I think that's pretty much what the death penalty is for. So Dominick starts to cry again, and Joe asked him to give him his guns. He's like, you know what? Maybe you didn't kill anybody. Maybe this is where this ends, and you don't get the death penalty. So he's like, just give me your guns. And so he does. He gives Joe his guns. And Joe's an Iraqi war veteran, so he knows how to, like, unload them, take them apart. I have no idea. I'd be like, let me just hold this with my 2 little fingers. Yeah, like, I have no idea. But then Dominick surrendered. In addition to Dan, the one that was paralyzed, 5 other people were actually shot, but not seriously injured. And a 7th person received a non-gunshot injury. And I couldn't find what that was. I'm guessing that he or she was possibly trampled.
That's
because,
what I'm thinking.
I mean, there's crowds, like, leaving. So besides Dan, all the others who were injured were treated and released from the local hospitals within 24 hours. So that's good news.
Yeah.
No one was killed during the shooting.
All right. So, kind of just putting a little spin off. I have a couple quotes from Dominick during all of this, but he was quoted saying, I wanted to go there to die by cops. I wanted them to shoot me. He mentioned that he was tired of suppressing pain from traumatic childhood experiences, as, I'm assuming, obviously, your parents, your dad dying, your mom putting you in foster care, the things that happened allegedly with the police at that retreat. So, it's kind of sad how this all kind of played out.
It's interesting how that's what he goes back to, is this camp, because he was in foster care. His dad died when he was 10, but this camp is the thing that he focused on.
Yeah.
That's weird.
Well,
and not weird, but just interesting.
I know, it's really interesting because if you think about it, like, from the psychological perspective, like psychology, sometimes you remember things that never really happened.
That's true.
So, like, that's why I say allegedly. We don't know if this happened, but he clearly has a memory of this happening.
Right. And, and they even said, like, we tried to find the policemen that were responsible, and we could never find them. I wonder if they even found if the camp even existed.
Yeah.
Like, if he even went to a camp that was run by police officers.
Yeah, I couldn't find anything stating any of this.
Yeah, I couldn't either.
So, but, all right. So, the day of the shooting, I know that Brooke mentioned that he had called one of his ex-girlfriends, but he actually texted an ex-girlfriend saying, "Today is the day the world will know my anger. Today the world will feel my pain. Today is the day I will be heard." And just that alone, it's, like, sad kind of to hear. Not that I feel bad for what he did. Obviously, he did something traumatic, and people have bad lives, and they don't go out shooting up the mall all the time. You know what I mean? So it's just kind of sad to hear that statement, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But the trial began on August 14th, 2007. And on October 2nd, 2007, the jury convicted Dominick of 6 counts of first-degree assault. The court also convicted Dominick of 4 counts of first-degree kidnapping, 2 counts of first-degree unlawful possession of a firearm, 2 counts of second-degree assault, and 1 count of second-degree attempted murder. So a lot of counts there, right?
I wonder if the one account attempted murder was on Dan, because he was shot 4 times, where it seems that all of the other victims were shot maybe once.
Yeah, that would make sense to me because, I mean, hitting somebody once is like
survivable.
And it's like when you're in a crazy place and things are happening and Black Friday, you're not really targeting an individual, whereas if you shoot somebody 4 times, obviously
you're targeting that
person.
Oh, that makes sense.
So that to me, that's kind of what I would.
And all Dan did was say, "Hey kid, how about we put down the gun?" Yeah. And then he's the one who got shot 4 times.
I mean, maybe that was like a trigger. Yeah, the way he said it or something along those lines. We did say that he was kind of out of his mind, if it is true that he was on meth, but a lot of the things he mentioned that he doesn't even remember making the 911 call. He doesn't remember what he said. Oh. He's like, when I heard it played back, I didn't realize that's what I said on the phone.
Oh, wow.
So, I mean,
he was very upset when he was making the 911 call, though, because Joe said that he was crying. Yeah. He was shaking. Because I think it's one thing to, like, think, I'm going to do this, but then to actually do it, he was kind of in shock that he actually did it. Yeah. He was kind of like, oh, wait, I really did shoot people. I really did hit people.
Yeah, he actually was quoted saying something along the lines of, I was inspired by learning about my victims, like, walking again and seeing them thrive and survive. And he's like, I'm so sorry for what I did.
That kind of makes me feel dirty. I don't like that.
Yeah. It's weird, but I think that, I mean, I'm just kind of putting words in the mouth, but like out of body kind of experience. And he comes back to it and he's like, what have I done?
Right. And so he's glad in a way that he didn't nobody was killed.
Yeah.
Everybody survived.
Exactly. So, during the trial, Roberta Davis, she was the one that was shot in her leg, and didn't realize she was shot until her husband pointed it out. But she addressed Dominick in the trial, stating, "You shed innocent blood that day. You shed my blood. You spilled my blood, but you didn't touch my spirit. No man can."
Aww.
And I thought that was like the best quote. I kind of
bitch, go girl.
I'm kind of like inspired by this woman. She's like, no man can take me down because I am, I'm a powerful woman. So I loved it. So Dominick does say that obviously he takes full responsibility for what happened and that he was very sorry for what he did, like I mentioned before. And he mentioned saying, like, at the time it sounded like a good idea, and I don't even know what that really means.
Yeah.
Like, it sounds like a good idea to go shoot up a mall today.
I wonder if he thought, if I go into a mall and I just start shooting, but I don't actually hit anybody, if cops will come in and kill me, then it'll be over with.
Yeah, and that's kind of where my thought process went, too, because a lot of the beginning of the shooting, he wasn't shooting at people.
Yeah, he was kind of shooting up in the air.
Up in the ceiling and stuff like that, so, yeah. I mean, that could be it, and because he does get visibly upset.
Right, and it looks very sincere.
Yeah.
Like, I've seen the pictures and I've seen the videos, and he does look very sincere when he's crying, and he is like, I can't believe I actually did this.
Right. Besides, like, all of the remorse that he is showing for what happened, he, on November 2nd, 2007, Dominick was sentenced to 163 years imprisonment.
Holy shit. I just have to say, like, there are people who get, like, 4 years for attempted murder. And that attempted murder pisses me off because, like, they didn't mean to attempt it. They meant to commit it.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I've heard of cases where, like, they've literally left somebody for dead and they get 4 years.
Right.
And he gets 163 years.
And he's 20 years old.
He's 20.
He's a kid.
Right? And he didn't kill anybody. I mean, not that shooting people is okay.
It's not okay.
No.
We are not condoning
right?
that.
And I mean, these people are going to have this trauma their entire lives.
Yeah.
And I totally get that. But 160, I mean, it's not a life, it's a life sentence without saying it's a life sentence.
Right. Well, what's so crazy about this whole 163 years is that 61 of those years were imposed as a special sentence for gun crimes.
So just because he used a gun?
Yeah.
So was it because he used a gun illegally or because
No, I think it's illegal. Maybe like the type
because
of gun.
Because he didn't have,
it didn't
specify. Semi-automatic.
Yeah, it didn't specify in because I read like the actual court documents, but it just said that's what the crime committed was. And the even crazier thing about this is that he has to complete those 61 years before the other part of the sentence will start.
Oh.
So, and he cannot get that sentence reduced for good behavior.
The 63 years?
The 61. Yeah,
or
he
61.
He has to stay in prison for at least those 61 years.
Which, at this point, he's now 22, because this is 2 years almost exactly after the crime. So now he's 22. So 61 years is 83 years old.
83 years old.
Guys, my grandma's 83 years old.
Yeah.
I don't think she could commit any kind of crime if she were to get out of prison right now.
So it's just kind of sad to think about that this 20-year-old kid has to, for sure, do 61 years.
Yeah.
So...
And for not killing anyone.
And it doesn't mean that his other sentence can be lowered, but even at 83, I mean, is he going to still be alive at 83?
Right. And even if he is alive, I mean, even if they gave him time served, he's 83 years old. Yeah. Like, literally, what would he do if he got out of prison?
Yeah, they might do, like, the mercy law. What do they call that when they let people out? I don't remember what it's called.
Yeah.
But, compassionate release.
Compassionate release. There we go.
I'm like, I know there's a word. Compassionate release. They might give him that at that point, but still.
Yeah.
It's just so sad. So on November 28th of that same year, 2007, Dominick filed a timely notice of appeal. So he challenges only the sufficiency of the evidence supporting his convictions for the first-degree assaults of Torres, Toomey, Stiles, and Davis. So Torres and Toomey are the two that were in the T-Mobile kiosk.
Mm-hmm.
Davis is the lady that was shot in the thigh. Mm-hmm. And then Stiles...
we don't know who Stiles is.
We tried to find information. It was just kind of weird, but this was actually pulled from the exact court document. Right. And they didn't have any information on Stiles, so I don't know if it was... Maybe that was the victim that was, like, trampled, as we're assuming, or something like that.
Oh, yeah, it could be.
But I don't know. I don't know, so we're not gonna put our guesses in there. But, so the idea was rejected... and it was proven that there was sufficient evidence pointing to the fact that Dominick intended to do great bodily harm when he fired in the mall and at the T-Mobile kiosk where Torres and Toomey were hiding. So, obviously, they thought he was full of crap when he was trying to say, I didn't intend to do bodily harm on anybody, but I guess if you fire... into a crowded place, you intend to do bodily harm. Correct. That's the only justification the courts needed.
And actually, I read a quote that I believe it was Toomey said that he actually was walking away from the kiosk, turned around, smiled at Toomey, and then shot 4 shots directly at the kiosk. So he knew what he was doing.
That's a creepy statement right there. He smiled before he made the shot.
Because he had walked past the kiosk multiple times and they had spoken. And so he was just like, ha ha ha, you didn't even know this was coming, and here it is. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
That's a little creepy. Seriously, his behavior makes me really think that either on drugs or some kind of mental break. I mean, that's the only thing I can think of at this point, because he doesn't seem like a psychopath by any means.
No.
So.
Obviously. I mean, he was crying.
Yeah. Psychopaths don't cry.
No.
And even if they fake it, they look like they're faking it. So.
And he did not. He looked sincere.
Yeah. He was hysterical. So, another crazy situation to leave you with in this great story is...
Not to leave you with, because there's a couple crazy situations that happen after he goes to jail.
But the craziest one that I think is his love story. So
he found love.
Found love in prison. All right, so while watching the news, a young lady by the name of Queen saw a story about Dominick and the mall shooting. And of course, it was love at first sight, right?
The mugshot.
Yes.
She fell in love with the mugshot,
like,
guys.
Yep.
That's him. He's the one.
That's him. Yep. That's basically what she said. She said, there was just something about him when I saw him on TV. I felt it right then and there that he was the one. So.
Too many Nicholas Sparks novels.
Yes, Nicholas Sparks. He gets you every time.
Right. Dear John. That's a good one.
But what's crazy, I mean, she later married Dominick in the spring of 2007. For the first 3 years of their marriage, they were limited to phone calls and photos. So conjugal visits are prohibited for the first 3 years. Yeah, there are definitely some photos of her.
In lingerie.
In lingerie in the rain?
Yeah.
I heard.
She's like walking, and she hired somebody. She hired like a homeless man. I read she hired a homeless man to take pictures of her walking around in the rain in lingerie.
I mean, because that's what you do.
Right? When you're a nerve.
Oh my god. I mean, seriously, I can't make this stuff up, guys. I'm just telling you as it is, okay? So, she was quoted saying, I will never let go, not today, not any day. And, like, I promise, I love him so much.
Like I promise.
And so,
y'all, I promise.
So this is just, I mean, this is interesting. So in an exclusive interview with ABC's affiliate KOMO in Seattle, the 23-year-old said that she has no regrets, even after her husband arranged for a dangerous escape that left another prisoner dead. So she doesn't have any regrets for marrying this man. When the reporter asked her if she was crazy, she could only reply, no.
No.
But I am crazy in love with him.
Oh.
Yeah. So,
heart emoji.
Guys, true love is out there, okay? I guess
go out and get it.
I guess that's where I need to go, is the prisons. Maybe I'll find my true love there.
Right.
Anyways, psychologists suggest that she's not necessarily mentally ill and that her rescue fantasy is quite common, not just among young women, but women and men of all ages.
Which is true. You hear about people writing to, like, serial killers in prison all the time. Yep. I think there's other, like, I feel like there are other people who got married in prison.
There's so many
serial killers. Yeah.
Like, we could probably
I mean, Bundy did, but it was his lawyer.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
That's a whole other story.
I mean, I feel like we could do a whole episode of a podcast of, like, people that got married to people that are incarcerated for...
And people they didn't know before they were incarcerated.
Yeah, totally. It's just, it's terrible. But, later in the interview, Queen mentions that she never had a job or a boyfriend. She only has her Siamese cat. And this is by far my favorite quote of all times. I don't feel like Dom is taking his place, she said. It's just that Dom is another love of my life, basically, in a human way.
You know, like not in a cat way.
So not in a cat way. She can have two loves in her life. Her Siamese cat and Dominick.
And Dominick, yeah.
So, I mean, whatever, right? So, let's talk a little bit about that prison break attempt that I was telling you about before. So, July 2011, Dominick staged a prison break holding scissors to a guard's throat while a fellow inmate broke through the prison door and security fences with a forklift.
I thought, the guy was also killed. The guy who was breaking out with him, he was shot and killed.
Yes, during that prison escape attempt.
Mm-hmm. And he didn't even get close to getting out.
Yeah,
like all he did was hold a guard hostage with scissors.
Yeah.
Well, look, that's his MO, holding somebody hostage. I didn't even think about that.
Weird.
Right? Yeah.
But, of course, our beautiful queen had mentioned that, I guess what I've heard, he just wanted to see me, she said. And at the same time, if he did it for me, or did it for love, I guess I shouldn't really be mad. So,
people died, but I'm not really mad.
I'm not mad, but he just wanted to see me. It's all for love.
Mm-hmm.
So, since the attempt to escape, Dominick has moved to Stamford Creek Correctional Facility near Aberdeen, and unfortunately, he won't get to see his wife for another year after this.
For a year?
Yeah.
So, I mean, she can't just... Where's Aberdeen?
It's Aberdeen.
Is it still in Washington?
Yeah, still in Washington.
Oh, okay. So, I mean, I guess she could go see him, but she can't see him.
Yeah.
So she can still go there. They just can't for a year.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, she may have since then.
Well, yeah,
2007.
that would have been... Well, no, that's 2011.
Oh, 2011.
So, 2012, 2013. She probably got to go back and see him, so...
I wonder if they're still married.
I'm
in
curious.
love. So my sources for this case were the I Survived episode, which was season 1, episode 7. The News Tribune article from Tacoma, Washington, November 29th, 2005. And the Seattle Times article from November 20th, 2005.
My sources for this podcast are Seattle Times, November 20th, 2005. ABC News, July 2011. Seattle Times, February 27th, 2006. Seattle Times, November 3rd, 2007. And Case Text, State versus Maldonado.
So next time we are bringing you Idaho, and it's an old one, guys, from the 1800s, so that'll be super fun. So we'll catch you next time, Idaho. Once you think you're out,
we pull you back in.
Bye, 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 bye.
Bye.
Man, I was holding that in.
Yeah. So what happens?
Hey fam, welcome to our first episode of True Crime.
State of Mind.
Woo woo!
I forgot that was my part. State of Mind. We got it. We're figuring it out. Slowly but surely, it's gonna work out. We're gonna get it.
What?
I'm gonna sneeze.
Oh.
And I think I scared it away. Can you imagine you're just talking?
As long as you don't sneeze like Jeremy, you'll be fine, because his are like,
yeah, mine are loud, but they're more like my dad's. And they all had the same lawyer? No, what's against them?
Prosecutor.
No.
Charges?
Charges. They were all charged with the same thing. It's like a modern day, like, the woman being the polygamist. What's the word for that? Bigamist? Is it bigamist?
No.
I can't can't even think of the word. Maybe I should.
Dead air.
Dead air. He became one of Michelle's best customers. He definitely got to the point of obsession, a lot of people say.
And remember, he was borrowing, like, pretty much all of his money from his parents right now, and he was spending it on Michelle.
Yeah. Everything on her. Like, that's how she was making $1,000 a night.
Yeah.
I think she picks one guy at a time. That's kind of how it works, and just sucks them dry. Well, that sounded really bad.
We're cutting that out. I mean, all the laughing. We're cutting out all laughing. This is the champagne room, guys.
Oh my God!
Champagne room stinks the shit.
John and Michelle had met Hughes while I already talked
Michelle
about
is Hughes.
What am I doing?
I'm like, wait a minute.
So it's just kind of a crazy situation. So on August 6th,
you say that a lot.
I do.
Situation. It's just a situation.
Situation.
It's a crazy situation.
You guys are welcome.
You know, it's interesting how he...
It's the cats.
The cats are trying to get in the room.
No, their cats are pooping.
Oh, is that what they're doing?
Yeah.
Nice.
Pooping.
Well, there's like they're trying to get in the room. Like, I can see his arms underneath the door. That's awesome.